Assalamu alaikum. I am Luqman Al-Kasabany and this is 𝐂𝐸𝐬 Academy. In today's episode, inshallah, we will discuss the letter Ra. So, stay tuned.
𝐂𝐸𝐬 Academy.
So, this is just remind you that we are explaining from Al-Minhaj book, the official book of 𝐂𝐸𝐬 Academy. Okay, so in the last episodes, we discussed from letter Alif until letter Dhal. So today, inshallah, we will discuss letter Ra. Our discussion today, inshallah, about letter Ra. Okay, so as we do in each class and in each episode, our discussion includes 4 questions. The first question, what is the point of articulation and how to pronounce the letter? Why the second one, whether this letter is heavy or light. The third point, however, is the counterpart of this letter in English. And letter Ra is one of the most important sounds when we speak about the counterpart of English, because some people might think that the counterpart is a certain letter in English. We'll discuss this, but it's not. Okay, so this is one of the most important sounds when it comes to the point of the counterpart in English. The fourth point, however, is what are the common mistakes when pronounce letter Ra. Okay, so let's now discover the first point. What is the point of articulation and how to pronounce it? Okay, so now when we speak about the point of articulation, I have a golden rule for you today. When you want to know the point of articulation of any letter, put it in the state of a sukun. Okay, Ra has sukun, and put Hamza before it. Okay, Hamza with Fatha. Okay, so now pronounce this word, okay, to know what is the point of articulation of letter Ra. So let's now pronounce this word together. I will say it, okay, and you have to discover by yourself what is the point of articulation of letter Ra. Ar, ar, ar. An example from the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim, in Surah Al-Fatiha. So, ar, ar, ar. So, now you know the point of articulation or not yet? Ar, ar. So actually the point of articulation of letter Ra is the tongue. Yes, we pronounce letter Ra by the tongue. Okay, from which part of the tongue and how we pronounce it? So this is what we discover now. Okay, so now as we said many times before, there's a mouth here, this is the tongue, and we have 3 parts as we know from each episode. We have here the first part, the top part of the tongue, which is nearest to the mouth. And we have here the back part of the tongue, and we have here the middle part of the tongue. Okay, so when we pronounce letter Ra, we use the tip part of the tongue. We said that the first part of the tongue, this part, is called the tip of the tongue. The first part of the tongue is called the tip of the tongue. This tip of the tongue touches a part called a hard palate. A hard palate close to the gums of the upper 2 front incisors. What is these difficult terms? Let's discover now by ourselves. Now, you want this, the first of all, the tip of the tongue, it's easy, we know it. This part, the first part of the top of the tongue. Okay, you see what? If we imagine here that this is the upper 2 front incisors. Okay, imagine that upper 2 front incisors here. Okay, and we have here the gums of upper two front incisors. We have here a strong area. If you touch it, this one is so strong. This part is called a hard palate. It's called what? A hard palate. So this tip of the tongue touches this area, the hard palate, close to the gums of upper two front incisors. You see this? You imagine now this part that the tip of the tongue touches it, the hard palate, which is this part. Okay, the hard area here before the gums of the upper two front incisors, but not in the hard palate. It's the hard palate close to the gums of upper two front incisors. You can say in between. Okay, so الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن على العرش استوى. And الراء has a quality which is called التكرير. التكرير. الرحمن You might listen it more than one time. This is what's called التكرير. الرحمن. But you have to control this takrir not to be repeated many times. Okay, التكرير means repetition. So it can't be repeated many times. Okay, for this reason Imam al-Jazari noted this in al-Jazariyya saying وأخفي تكريرا إذا تشدد, which means control this repetition when it comes in the state of التجديد or الشدة. Okay, let's take an examples from the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says الرحمن على العرش استوى. This is in the state of التجديد. This is what Ibn al-Jazari said وأخفي تكريرا إذا تشدد. الرحمن على العرش استوى. الرحمن على العرش استوى. الرحمن على العرش استوى. الرحمن على العرش استوى. له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وما بينهما وما تحت الثرى. له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وما في الأرض وما في الأرض وما بينهما وما تحت الثرى. وإن تجهر بالقول فإنه يعلم السر. وإن تجهر بالقول فإنه يعلم السر وأخفى. Okay, so this is the point of articulation of letter ra and how we pronounce it. Okay, so let's now move to the next question, which is whether this letter is a heavy letter or a light one. Okay, so now in each letter from the last letters, when it comes to this question, we say that this letter is whether heavy or light. But today we have a new answer. How is that? This means that this letter is neither heavy nor light. No at all. But the answer is this letter is light in some cases while heavy in other. Okay, so again, what does heavy and light letter mean? We said we speak about the back of the tongue. If the back of the tongue is raised, this letter will be heavy. But if the back of the tongue is not raised, this letter will be light. So this means that letter re, the back of the tongue when pronouncing letter re sometimes is raised which means becomes heavy, and sometimes is not raised, which means it becomes light. Okay, so now if I told you that letter ra in some cases it's heavy and in some cases it's light, it makes sense to ask me when it would become heavy and when it will become light. Or you can ask me how I know that a ra in this word is a light, and how can I know that a ra in this case is heavy. Okay, and this is your right to ask this question, by the way. So how can we know? Okay, there are many cases that a ra will become light, and there are many cases that a ra will become heavy. We discuss this inshallah later in detail, but I will tell you now some cases just to know them, just to imagine the case. Okay, so first of all, a ra, we have the main three harakat: al-fatha, al-kasra, and al-dhamma. Okay, so let's use this color. Okay, this is fatha, this is dhamma. Okay, and I want a light one, and this is kasra. From the colors I use now, the dark blue and the light blue, you can imagine whether ra it will be heavy and whether ra it will be light. Okay, yes, the ra that will be heavy, this one, sorry, I want to use the dark one, this one and this one, and the ra that would be light, this one, which means a ra in the state of al-fath and al-dhamm, which means when a ra has fatha or dhamma, it will be heavy, and when a ra has kasra, it will be light. So how this? For example, this ra, it's heavy, the back of the tongue will be raised, ra, and also ru, the back of the tongue will be raised. Why? Because it has dhamma, or it's in the state of al-dhamm. So when it has fatha or when it has dhamma, the back of the tongue is raised, which means it will be heavy. Ra, ru. But if it has kasra, it will be light. Ri. You can imagine, you can see now, you can understand now how it will be light. Ri. The back of the tongue, it will not be raised. Ri. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة. رجال لا تلهيهم رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة. Okay, so this is the example of the ra when it has kasra, when it becomes in the state of sukun, in the state of in the state of the lightness, or when it becomes in what's called in Arabic muraqqaqa. We have ra mufakhama and ra muraqqaqa, a heavy ra and light ra. الراء المفخمة والراء المرققة, the heavy one and the light one. متى تكون الراء مفخمة, or when the ra becomes in the state of التفخيم? Many cases, but just now know when it has fatha or dhamma, and when it becomes kasra, or متى تصبح في حالة الترقيق, when it has kasra. Okay, so now we take an examples of this ra that has kasra. Now we want an examples of this ra that has fatha and this ra that has dhamma. Okay, the ra that has fatha, that Allah saying قال رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. قال ربي إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. Okay, and we want an example also of the ra that has dhamma. Okay, so now we will have an ayah that has ra with fatha and ra with dhamma. قل أرأيتم ما تدعون من دون الله أروني قل أرأيتم ما تدعون من دون الله أروني ماذا خلقوا قل أرأيتم ما تدعون من دون الله أروني. So sorry for this pausing. So again, قل أرأيتم ما تدعون من دون الله أروني. In both cases it's heavy. So what is the answer now, my dear students, of this question? Whether ra it's heavy or light? Ra in some cases is light, and in some cases it's heavy. Depends on what? Depends on the state of a ra. Now we know three states. When a ra has fatha or dhamma, this is the first. We can say two states. When a ra has fatha or dhamma, it will be heavy, and when a ra has kasra, it will be light. Okay, so this is the answer of the first two questions. Let's now move to the third question, which is what is the counterpart of letter ra in English? This is, my dear students, one of the most important points when discussing letter ra. Why? Because some books explain when want to put a counterpart of letter ra in English, they say letter R. Okay, and also some students believe that letter R looks like letter or harf al-ra in Arabic, and this is a common mistake. Why it's a common mistake? Now I want you to understand why it's a common mistake, not just to take my saying without knowing why. I told you now how to pronounce letter ra. Okay, we said the tip of the tongue, okay, touches the hard belly closer to the gums of our two front incisors. So this is the point of articulation of letter ra and how to pronounce it. So let's now know what is the point of articulation of the letter R, okay, and how to pronounce it. So the point of articulation of letter ra is the tongue, as the tip of the tongue touches the alveolar ridge or approaches the alveolar ridge, or even curled back slightly. If you don't understand what is alveolar ridge and what is these difficult terms, simply letter R. When pronounced letter R, the tongue must create an arch, okay, an arch like this, by flattening and rising in the middle. So this is how the tongue looks when pronounced letter R, like this. Okay, so if we draw this, sorry for this. This is the head, this is the mouth here, and this is the tongue. Okay, this is the shape of the tongue when pronounced letter ra. Okay, so it's like an arch. Okay, master, car, master. Okay, and this is unlike letter ra in Arabic. There is no arch when pronounced letter ra. There is no this roll, okay? But as we said, when pronounced letter ra, the tip of the tongue, okay, touches the hard palate closer to the gums of upper two front incisors. So the letter ra and the English sound R look similar, but they are not similar because because the distinction and the difference we said here, okay? So there is an arch for letter R, but which is not found when pronounced letter ra. So ra, r, a great difference between them. So when we say, is there a counterpart of letter ra in English? The answer is no. So, okay, the answer is no. There is no counterpart of letter ra in English. Okay, so let's now move to the next question, which is, what is the common mistakes when pronouncing letter ra? The first common mistake when pronouncing letter ra, making a ra heavy when it should be light. Making a ra heavy when it should be light. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, فَذَكِّرْ إِن نَفَعَتِ الذِّكْرَى. Okay, we have here ra has kasra and kaf has kasra and tajrid bi kasr, and ra has sukun. So when a ra comes after kasra and in the state of a sukun, this ra will become light. This is one of the states. So we should say فذكر 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 فذكر, like as in the ayah فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى, or فذكر إنما أنت مذكر فذكر إنما أنت مذكر. Okay, but some people make the sound of the letter ra in this case heavy. They saying فذكر 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 and make it heavy, and the back of the tongue is raised. فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى فذكر فذكر إنما أنت مذكر فذكر إنما أنت مذكر. They make the sound of a ra heavy, and this is a mistake and this is wrong. Why? Because a ra in this case should be light, like this. فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى فذكر فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى فذكر إنما أنت مذكر. Okay, and this is, to be honest, needs practicing and needs reciting to a shaykh, and this shaykh when you make a mistake correct for you, and you made again and you correct for you until you practice it perfectly without any mistake. So this is the first mistake, make the sound of a ra heavy when it should be light. Okay, so let's now move to the next, or the second common mistake. The second mistake is the opposite of the next one. We said in the next one, we said in the first one, we said in the first one, making a ra heavy when it should be light. So the second common mistake, making the ra light when it should be heavy. Okay, for example, the word Maryam. Okay, ومريم ابنة عمران التي أحصنت فرجها فنفخنا فيه من روحنا. So ومريم. So ra in this case it's heavy because it has fatha before it and in the state of sukun, so it will become heavy. Okay, should be ومريم, the back of the tongue should be raised. ومريم. But some students say it, and even some people say Maryam. they say Maryam. Maryam. Okay, and here there are two mistakes done. The first mistake is making the letter meme heavy and letter meme is light and not heavy, and making the next ra light when it should be heavy. So they make everything opposite. Okay, so they said Maryam, 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 Maryam. They make it Maryam, Maryam, Maryam. Okay, mar. They make it light, Maryam, but it should be heavy. Maryam, Maryam, not Maryam or not Maryam, but it's mar. And meme is light and a ra is heavy. Maryam, Maryam. Okay, Maryam. Don't make a ra as a light letter because it's heavy in this case. Okay, meme is light and a ra is heavy. The back of the tongue is raised. Maryam. Okay, Maryam. So this is the second common mistake. So the third common mistake, however, is repeating the sound of letter ra. Repeating its sound, trilling the tongue, which results in repeating the sound of letter ra. An example, the word 𝐿-Razzaq. 𝐿-Razzaq. Okay, it's 𝐿-Razzaq, but some students and some people say ar. They repeat the sound. For this reason, as we said before, Al-Imam Al-Jazari rahimahullah says وأخف تكريرا إذا تشدد. وأخف تكريرا إذا تشدد, which means control the repetition. Okay, the repetition is one of the qualities, but don't repeat it more and more. So don't say ar. You see this repetition? No, control this repetition. An example from the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says إن الله هو الرزاق ذو القوة المتين. إن الله هو الرزاق ذو القوة المتين. The last common mistake we have is circling the lips when pronouncing heavy letter ra. Circling the lips or making dhamma, circling the lips. Okay, how this done? Okay, we said before that the heavy letter means that the back of the tongue is raised. Okay, it has nothing to do with the shape of the lips. Okay, so the shape of the lips is not circled, is not rounded. Okay, it has nothing to do with the shape of the lips. So this is a common mistake, circling the lips or making the sound of a dhamma when pronouncing the heavy ra. And to be honest, it's not heavy ra, it's all heavy letters. This is a common mistake, circling the lips or rounding the lips. But now let's just speak about letter ra. So this is a common mistake, circling or rounding the lips when pronouncing heavy ra. How? Or let's take an example in Allah saying Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Okay, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Okay, we say it like this, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim. It's heavy. Why it's heavy? Because the back of the tongue is raised. But some people think that the heaviness is done by circling the lips and say like this. Look, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim. They say Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim and circling the lips, and they thought that the heaviness of this ra in this case is done by circling the lips, and this is wrong because the heaviness is by raising the back of the tongue. Okay, sorry for this repetition, but this is because it's a common mistake. I saw it among many students, whether native Arabic speakers or non-native Arabic speakers. So how we will say it? We will say it by raising the tongue and without rounding the lips, like this. Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim. So this is the correct pronunciation, and don't say it like this. Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim. Okay? So again, the correct pronunciation is الرحمن الرحيم. Okay, and try to control the repetition. وأخفي تكريرا إذا تشددوا. This is the end of our discussion today. I hope now you can read and pronounce letter Ra correctly, and I hope your recitation of Quran becomes better now. So in the next episode, inshallah, we will take the shape mate of letter Ra, which is letter Zay or Zay, in the part 11, inshallah, of the Arabic alphabet letters. If you have any question of letter Ra or in general in this episode, just write it in the comment section below, and inshallah I'll try to answer all of your questions. Stay tuned. Now we came to the end of this episode. So if you want to follow up the next episodes, consider subscribing. Also, if you want a qualified Quran tutor, whether for yourself or your kids, we are providing online Quran classes. Don't forget to check out our app. See you inshallah in the next episode. Assalamu alaikum.
Shaykhi Academy. Learn and enjoy.